Welcome back to another episode of the Seafarer Social Podcast. Today, my guest is Captain Abishek Nair, and I'm very, very thankful that he's taken the time to speak to me. I know that he's a very, very busy man. Abhishek has been a seafarer for 18 years, 4 of which he was a master in command. Now he is based in Rotterdam and he's working as Director of Business Developments for PortXchange. And I'm really, really excited to speak with him today about his career, about his work that he's doing ashore now, his future thoughts in careers in ports and at sea. And I'm also going to dig a little bit into the future of what his thoughts are in terms of India and becoming a labor market, a bigger labor market, specifically in shipping. But to begin with, I just want to say, hi, Abhishek, how are you?
Hi, Carl. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So I know you're currently in India at the moment, although usually based in Rotterdam. Have you gone back home for holidays? How long are you in India for?
Yes, indeed. I'm here for the school break. So we are here for 6 weeks. Once the
Oh,
school break
fantastic.
is over, we are back in Rotterdam.
So do your children study in Rotterdam or they study in India or both?
They study in Rotterdam.
I see. Okay, so you've just come back for the 6 week break to spend some time with
Yes,
the
indeed.
family.
Yes, indeed.
Nice. And how's the weather in India?
Well, it's raining like hell. So it's the peak of the monsoon period. And yeah, I'm getting all the rains that I could wish for.
And in Europe right now it's super hot, right?
I know. Yeah. I was just speaking to my neighbor this morning and he was telling me it's super hot and the barbecues are out. I said, yeah, that's it's quite a contrast.
Well, Abhishek, I know that you've been like you said, a seafarer for 18 years. Um, where did this all start? What was it that inspired you originally to start studying maritime and train as a cadet?
Thanks for the question, Carl. So, firstly, you said I was a seafarer for 18 years. I would like to correct that and say I'm a seafarer for life. So, once a seafarer, you're always a seafarer. Yeah. Yeah. I spent 18 years out at sea before I tried my skills ashore. But I would still consider myself as a full-fledged seafarer. Yeah, and raring to go back anytime I want.
Thank you for correcting me.
Okay. Yeah. And then how did I start off? So, yes, so I come from a place called Hyderabad in India. It's very far off from the sea. However, it was an area where you usually had a lot of people from the defense background who were there. And that kind of had, kind of lured me towards the uniform services. And yeah, it was, I would say, a mixture of different things that came together, and I was able to get myself into Marine Academy just right out of high school. When I was 17, I stepped into Marine Academy, and for some reason from day one onwards, it just felt like that was my calling. I just kind of clicked with everything, whatever that they were talking about, everything that were teaching was just something that I really identified with. It was something that I kind of thought, hey, this is kind of pretty easy, and this is what I'm meant to do. It was my comfort zone, I should say. And following on that, I joined my first ship a few months later, and there was no looking back after that. I just kind of enjoyed my time at sea, and it was just, as I said, it was my calling, I should say.
So, what was the time gap between completing your studies and actually getting your first contract?
So at that point of time, this was way back in 1999 when I started off. Uh, so my pre-sea training was about 4 months. Following that, there were other trainings that you need to do, mandatory trainings that were required to be done. And following that, you were able to join a ship as a cadet. So I would say, all in all, from the time I started my pre-sea training until the time that I stepped on board my first ship, that was about 8 months. And then I was what we call in during those days in India a direct entry cadets. So that is you. What you would do is you would spend a lot of time on sea as a cadet, and then come back in intermittently to come and do your different courses. So you typically have 36 months of sailing time as a cadet, and at least about, I would say, 18 months of studying in college to get your qualifications.
Nice. Okay. And how was the first experience for you when you went on board and your first voyage away from home? What was your first crew like? What was your first memories, your earliest memories of being on board ship?
So the first ship that I joined, that was the officers on board that ship were Italian, and the crew was Filipino. I was the only Indian on board. It was a lot of fun, I should say. I had just turned 18. It's the first time I was staying, away from home, but it was a lot of fun, and for me it was one big adventure. And I should say, your earliest experiences out at sea are very much dependent on the crew that you have. And by crew, I mean, everybody is starting from the master until, right to the second cook or the steward, and everybody tried to make me feel very home. And there was something that you learn from each and every one every day. And I think that was the best part of being out at sea. You're learning from so many different people. And to this day, I would say, that's the one thing, because I consider myself to be the cumulative effect of everybody that I have sailed with, everybody that I've learned from. I think there's a small bit of every one of each one of them in me today.
Well, let's talk about those people. Is there anybody? So forgive me, as I said at the beginning, 18 years a seafarer, but you're right. Once a seafarer, always a seafarer. But you're in your 18 years of being at sea. Can you talk to me about some of the pivotal characters you came across who maybe transformed you? Because I think that could be really useful in understanding what the journey was like to eventually becoming a master mariner.
So that's a great question, and it's not something that I really thought about. But thinking about it now, what happens is your early stages as out at sea, you're a cadet, and when you're a cadet, you're typically being mentored by the chief officer. So it's usually that chief officer who is the person whom you're having the most contact with. You're having the most, you can say, fights with. You're having the most grudges against, because yeah, he says, he or she tells you something, to do something, and then you probably don't do it the right way, and then they're correcting you. Sometimes you take it the right way, sometimes you take it the wrong way, but nevertheless, that's the one person who's always counting on you. So whether it's good or bad, they are always counting on you, and you learn the most from them. So yes, I mean, for those, because you're spending what 36 months as a cadet, and all throughout that cadetship, it's always these chief officers that you're learning from the most, because you're typically doubling up on navigational watches with them. You're doubling up on cargo maintenance with them. You're doubling up on cargo watches with them. So it's them that you really learn a lot from. And oftentimes, it's often said at sea that there are only two ranks during which you are actually learning the most. Number one is when you're a cadet. That's when you learn the most. And the next time that you're actually learning a lot is when you're a chief officer. And that was the same for me as well. Yeah. So when I was cadet, I learned a lot, and I think I learned a lot also when I was a chief officer, when I also had to mentor some cadets. So yes, it's a two-way thing, and it's very enjoyable, I should say.
Did you always have a tunnel vision towards the fact that one day you wanted to become captain?
Yes, very much so. I think I've seen from the time that I went out to Marine Academy, the one thing that I had in my mind is that I wanted to be a captain. So when I was out at Marine Academy, this was in Chennai in India, we had a very senior captain who came to teach us. Uh, this was Captain Sequeira, and he had a very nice, way of speaking, and he asked us, "Hey, boys, do you know, which watch does the third mate keep?" And we all said, "Oh, we understand he keeps the 8 to 12 watch." And then he asked, "Okay, what about the second mate? He does the 12 to 4 watch, and the chief mate does the 4 to 8 watch. And what does the captain do?" So we were all like, "Oh, what does the captain do?" And then he said, "Yeah, the captain doesn't keep any watch. He just doesn't have any work to do." Uh, and we were like, wow, that sounds so good. And then, Captain Sequeira, the person that he was, he said, "Yeah, and, gentlemen, that's one of the reasons why I was out at sea for 36 years. And so you're listening to these stories, and you feel, oh wow, this sounds so good. It sounds too good to be true. Yeah, this is what I want to do all my life.
Amazing. Um, that's awesome. So eventually, obviously, you did achieve your Master Mariner, and you were sailing 4 years as captain. I imagine in there you had numerous. Were you with the same company for those 4 years, or did you move around?
As master, I was in the same company throughout.
Okay, nice. And then eventually, you came ashore. Was there any particular reason why you had to come ashore? Or anything you can share, or is that a private matter?
No, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing to hide here. So, as I said, while I was out at sea, it was very much my comfort zone, it was my sweet spot. So I was very happy doing what I was doing, and this was when I became a master. That's when I had a daughter. And my wife, actually, she pretty much asked me, what are your plans? Is this something that you want to do all your life, or do you want to also push yourself a little more? And for me, yeah, this, I mean, being a master, being a captain, that was something that I was very, very happy about. I was enjoying myself. It was also something that, yeah, when I started out sailing, it was my dream that I should become a captain on a VLCC. And I bided my time, and yeah, I took a command only on a VLCC. I didn't want to become a captain on a smaller ship. That's something that I wanted, and I was doing that. But my wife was also quite insistent that you need to also think about how you want to spend your family life, uh, and how do you want to push yourself, because you're quite happy, I can see that. But do you also want to explore other opportunities? And at that point, I said, yeah, there's no harm in trying and probably pushing myself a little more. And I always had this thing in the back of my mind that I wanted to study a little more about international trade and economics. And by that point, I was already actually a member of the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers. During my studies for the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers, I was exposed to the subject of economics, and I found it very interesting. And I thought maybe I should dig a little more deeper into it, and that's how I decided to do a master's course in maritime economics in Rotterdam. And so, yeah, I had applied for this course at Erasmus University, and yeah, got admitted to this. Um, it was also, my daughter was about 3 years then. She was just about 1 year away from going to school. So we said, yeah, let's take this 1 year break from sailing. Go to Rotterdam, see Europe. Have some fun, and and then we are ready for putting her back to school in India. Uh, so that's how we landed up in Rotterdam. I was doing this course on maritime economics, enjoyed it a lot. And at the end of it, yeah, I did have a couple of job offers that came by, and I wasn't absolutely sure whether I wanted to take it. But they were quite interesting opportunities, and I thought, yeah, I should give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, yeah, I could always get back to sea. So that's how I started off, and then I got into store tankers. I was in their chartering team, and then got into port operations. So that's the journey.
Nice. And now you're director of business developments for PortXchange. And how has that role come about? Because obviously PortXchange is still a relatively new business, and a lot of the work they're doing is based around sustainability within ports, especially the Rotterdam port, which is one of the most famous, biggest ports in the world. How's the lifestyle now compare of working on board as a captain to now working for a relatively scale up business within maritime, shore based?
Well, so while I was doing a master's in maritime economics, one subject that I was kind of very interested in was around sustainability and CO2 emissions from ships. And this was back in 2015, when nobody was even talking about it. The thesis that I wrote then was around alternative fuels, and that was, yeah, that shaped out pretty well. In fact, me and my thesis supervisor, we took a little further, and presented it at a couple of conferences outside, as well as then we took it even further, and made an academic research out of it. So we wrote a scientific paper on it. So I very much, I would say, I would spend my Saturdays and Sundays, thinking about different models, different calculation models, and how you could optimize the use of alternative fuels on board ships. So that was something that I was quite interested in, even while I was working with stoll tankers. And at stoll tankers, I was working in the port operations team, and oh boy, that was something that it was more like a trading job, because if you got up from your table and use the toilet, by the time you get back, things have changed completely. Things moved so fast.
Yeah.
And while I was working there, what you also realize is, hey, these things move so quickly. There's also a huge need for things to be far more efficient, because you miss something and it's gone. And that is where you see the big gaps in the market. Hey, if I use something, this could have been done so much more better. So there was this big gap in the market that I could see around digitalization, as well as improving operational efficiencies within ports. Uh, because I said that was my job day in and day out. Optimizing the operations of ships coming into that ARA region, which is Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Antwerp region. That entire region, we had ships coming in and out. And how do we optimize the port stays of these ships within that region as much as possible? So that's something that you're constantly thinking about. Uh, and that's when you always thought, hey, if I had this tool that could have eased the pain of this. Hey, if I use this, I wouldn't have lost money there, and
Yeah.
there, my company's losing money there. I wouldn't have lost that out. So those things were there, and that's just about when I was having a few discussions with certain other members of the marine fraternity in Rotterdam, uh, whom I was in contact with them through the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers and the Nautical Institute. I knew them, and so they made a couple of introductions to me with the Port of Rotterdam, and there I got to know that Port of Rotterdam was working on a project like this called back then it was called the Project Pronto, and they were working on port call optimization. So that sounded very, very interesting to me. But at that point of time, it was an internal project for the Port of Rotterdam, and yeah, but I would say a few months down the line, I saw that Pronto or Port of Rotterdam, they were looking to expand the team. And so they were looking for a business consultant. And yeah, I had applied for the role, went for the interview, and yeah, things kind of clicked. They liked me, I liked them, I liked the work that they were doing. They thought I could be a great addition to the team, and that's how then I joined PortXchange. So yeah, I was actually
Nice.
the I was actually the first external hire for PortXchange, because until then it was a small project within Port of Rotterdam, and I was the first one to be hired outside of Port of Rotterdam.
That's really cool. And it's also even cooler to see that from an educational standpoint and writing your theses around this particular area, you're now within a position, within an exciting scale up business that's actually making a difference on something you're passionate about, which not a lot of
Absolutely.
people can say that they're actually working on. So, congratulations on that. What I'd like to ask you is, as you have a very unique viewpoint from the perspective of being a seafarer yourself, as well as being involved now somewhat with the operative sides of ports, what do you think, in particular, seafarers can do in terms of being a stakeholder when it comes to sustainability within ports? What actions, what involvement, what can be enhanced directly from the seafarer that can increase sustainability within ports?
Yeah. So nice question, Carl. Let me actually tell you a story around this. Okay. So this was when I was a master, probably a few months into my tenure. We were actually heading into Rotterdam. Just before I was coming into the English Channel, and I'm sure, I mean, a lot of your listeners are seafarers, and some of them who are not. English Channel tends to be one of the highest density traffic other than Singapore Straits. And you're coming in there with a fully loaded VLCC, and just then you get to know that, hey, your berthing window is kind of changed. you're going to be about a few hours out. And what do I do? Yeah, I just asked my duty mate. Yeah, what we'll do is we'll take a circle around, and then we'll come back. So you take a circle on a VLCC, it's easily going to take at least 2 hours of your voyage, at least 2 hours, because yeah, these are huge mammoths. Their turning circle is going to be at least a mile. So they are huge. So and that's something that I had learned from my own seniors. That it's something so ingrained in me that, hey, this is what I do. And thinking about it now, I think there were so many other options. The options were, hey, could I just slow down? Could I do something else? I mean, of course, there are different factors to be taken into account. Is the weather conducive for you to slow down? Is the traffic conducive for you to slow down? But uh, that being said, at that point of time, uh, the environmental footprint of my actions was never a concern. What I did consider was, what are the commercial implications to me
Mm,
taking this action? What are the commercial
yeah.
implications? And I thought, yes, within those constraints that I have, I think, yes, I'm good enough to take this decision and do this. Uh, and so that is well ingrained in me. You are not thinking about the environment at all. And I would say, the entire generation of seafarers, my generation and generations previous to us, that was never you can say, a variable that we thought about. So that is the big change that we need to do. It's the mindset that needs to change. We need to make sure that the seafarers who are coming in now, they always use the environmental constraint as one of the variables in their decisions. That is very, very important. They have to change. You have to change it from the grassroots level, and it's only then that can we make meaningful change in the industry.
I totally agree. I think a lot of the work that can be done from that grassroots level is definitely within the schools, but
Yeah.
also through media. You know me. I'm a very big advocate for social media, and I think there's a lot we could do when it comes to next
Yep.
generation and teaching them about sustainability. But I thought it was really interesting the point you made about how the decision you made was purely commercial. Do you think
Yep.
that, given sustainability, do you think it's possible to be sustainable and commercial at the same time?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, of course. I mean, you will have a range of priorities. Now, when I said that I made this decision based on commercial factors, let's not forget there were even other factors. Like, I had to consider the safety. I had to consider the safety of
Yeah,
of my crew. I had to consider the safety of my ship. Yes, those were multiple variables that I was thinking about. But the environment, no, that was not something that I ever thought about. But that needs to come into the equation now. Now, as we move forward, it's important to add that to the equation. So, yes, there are multiple ways that the industry is moving right now. Like, if you're looking at, let's say, coming into Europe, into Rotterdam, obviously, thinking about the EU ETS. Hey, it's the EU ETS is also involved. So now, does this action also then follow on with a with a on my P&L? But what I'm saying is, it's not just the monetary effect that you have to think about. Also think about what it is doing to the environment. Now, when I took that big circle, because I thought that was probably the most prudent way to adjust my ETA, what I didn't ever consider that, hey, taking that one circle is putting out, yeah, if you're putting 2 hours extra on a VLCC, you're thinking of close to 4 8 that's close to 24 tons of CO2. That's
yeah,
24 tons of CO2 that you've put out. Yeah, for what? And you could have probably found a better way to it.
yeah. No, I totally agree. That's really interesting. Um, Small decisions that can make a big difference on such a huge scale when it comes to something like
Absolutely,
this.
absolutely. And this is just one instance. I'm telling you, there are
Yeah,
there are multiple instances happening every day. Every day you take one small action, and yeah, there's something happening behind it. And until now, mostly whatever actions you take on board, you're typically thinking, hey, if I do this, yeah, it'll probably end up in a higher fuel consumption, which means it is bad for my P&L. I'm not considering, hey, it's bad for the environment.
yeah.
So I'm just thinking in commercial terms. Of course, I'm thinking about safety. I'm thinking about other things. Is it good for the ship? Is it good for other things that I'm thinking about, but not the environment? So that was always that was never thought about. But now it is coming in the equation, and again, it's coming in the equation for the younger folk, for the younger generation. I would still say that we still are a far way away from having this ingrained in the current generation of seafarers, because they would still be thinking, hey, yes, I need to think about the environment because I need to comply with Marpol, I need to comply with my seat plan, I need to
Yeah.
comply with all the sustainability things that the office has thrust upon me. So it's not ingrained in me. I'm doing it because I'm being told to do it. But you need to get to a level where you don't have to think about, when I get out of this room, I am programmed to switch off the lights because, hey, I don't want to waste the electricity in this room. But there could be other cultures out there where, yeah, leaving the room with all the lights on, with the aircon on, is pretty normal. You need to get it within your mindset that no, you need to start being efficient in every step, in everything that you do. It's so ingrained within me, thinking about, hey, if I'm going to switch off the lights, it's good for the P&L, and it's also good for the environment. And that is something that probably needs to come into our current generation of seafarers, as well as the ones who are younger. In fact, I do think the future generations of seafarers that we have are going to be far more environmentally conscious than me, or people who are senior to me are. There's no doubt about that, because that's something that they are listening to every day, day in and day out, and that's what they're growing up with. So they are obviously going to be far more, you can say, careful about the environment, and far more mindful of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and not
And
just
probably.
that.
Hmm.
Not just that. I also think a lot of young people think it's quite cool. Like it's actually quite
Exactly.
cool to be involved
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
sustainable projects. Like I did some work with my local port, which is Portsmouth Port, and it's a very small port. Um, but they're owned by our local council, but they did a whole revamp of the port. They built a brand new building, and everything from the water they use to flush the toilets is from the sea, and the solar panels on the roof power up the whole port from the electric standpoint completely economically, with amazing beautiful plants everywhere. It's a really beautiful place to sit and wait if you're waiting for your ferry or something. But
Hmm.
what's really cool is that having this kind of initiative, creating something new, making it attractive, is actually very appealing to young people. They want
Yeah.
to work and feel part of something that is making a difference. So I think actually sustainability isn't just necessary, but it's also attractive, very
True.
attractive.
Yeah.
Really
Absolutely. Yeah.
interesting. Really interesting you spoke about next generation, though, because that brings me on to my next topic. So I want to break this down into two sections. So, we're talking a lot about, everybody within maritime is talking a lot about how we can appeal to the next generation. So I'd like to get your opinion, firstly, from a seafarer perspective. Um, there is a global shortage of seafarers and maritime professionals. Well, this is a little bit of a interesting subject because actually, when I've gone to the Philippines, there seems to be lots of cadets that are actually begging for a job. But nevertheless, let's say there's a global shortage of officers, because that we can definitely agree on, and maritime professionals. How can the industry appeal to the next generation to consider careers at sea, or in fact, like I said, in ports? So, from the perspective of maritime professionals working in ports, and from the perspective of seafarers, how do you think, as an industry, we can bring more young people into it?
Well, firstly, yes, it is quite difficult right now for youngsters to feel, I would say, excited about going out to sea, because we are living in an age of social media, and everything everywhere that we see around is, hey, somebody's doing this, somebody's doing that, and it's right, it's all in their face, and suddenly you're talking about this one profession where you are quietly put away out at sea for 2 3 months, and nobody's going to see you or hear of you. Of course, it's not that bad, but it really, if I tell this to my nephew who's 18 years old right now, he might say, no, why would I want to go out and do this? I can do something else here. So yes, it is, the onus is on all of us, seafarers, ex-seafarers, people working in the maritime industry, to educate the newer generation of this profession, and excite them about this. Tell them this is an exciting part. And again, let's not forget, we have to accept the fact that you are going to have quite a few of these seafarers who might go out to sea now, and they might not wait to become master mariners or chief engineers. That's perfectly fine. They might be out at sea for the next five years, gain sufficient experience to take it ashore and do something else, and that's perfectly fine. Because even them, what they do is, they get experience, a little bit of experience out at sea, and they are able to transfer those skills in other jobs within the maritime sector, and that's fine. But you definitely do need, again, a subset of these seafarers who will continue on to become master mariners or chief engineers and stay out to sea for much longer. You do need that, because you cannot continue to have seafarers that is missing one complete generation. You cannot do that. So you need to have that continuum, needs to be set in place. And for that, we do need to have a lot of, you can say, road shows. I would say, go out to high schools and speak to children about this. Educate them that, hey, there is this career option for you out there that you can pursue it. It's a lot of fun. You learn a lot and you apply a lot of things. Honestly, if you ask me, this is probably one of the only professions out there where you're applying real mathematics, real physics, real chemistry, real biology in your day-to-day work. I don't know of any of my other friends from school, who went on to become, let's say, accountants, who went to become, chartered accountants, who went on to become, some of them working in, FANG companies. No, they are sitting behind, the computers and doing some great work, no doubt. But are they applying what they learned, what they learned while they were in school, while they were in college? I don't think so. No. And this is one profession where you do.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was speaking to an amazing lady in Canada actually last week, and she said to me one of the things that she speaks to young people about, and I thought she worded it really nicely. She said, "What you have to know is that seafaring is one of life's very last adventures. If you really look at, you know, the realm of possibilities and predictability in many careers nowadays, seafaring is the complete opposite. It's an opportunity to see the world, and have absolutely no idea what you're signing yourself up to. And for some, that's a very exciting proposition, right? Now, of course, when we're talking about the next generation, of course, every business nowadays is competing against the possibility of bringing your laptop to Bali and working on a beach and sipping pina coladas. That is now a possibility, and for some,
Yeah.
you just can't compete with that. But I like to say, and I think I said to you when we spoke a week or so ago, that I've learned seafaring is not for everybody. It takes a specific individual with a specific mindset to do it. But I think that actually, if seafaring was sold in such a way where it was looked upon as one of life's very last adventures, I think that's a really nice way to put it, right? One of life's very
It is
last
definitely one of,
adventures.
yeah, it does sound so exciting to me, for sure. Yeah.
And some people would listen to that and go, I want to experience something like that.
Yes.
And then on
Yeah.
top of that, uncover and peel it back, the opportunities and the opportunities to become a master mariner. What becoming a master mariner actually means.
Yeah.
The level of honor that comes with that. A man or
Yeah.
woman in the uniform is still respected even today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that, and it's good money. It's great money, tax free. So
True.
I think that there are great ways to sell the career. I just don't know if it's necessarily being sold
Yeah,
correctly.
there's also one concern I do keep hearing, on and off, where somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to come out and do this job, and what if I don't like it?" Okay, big deal. If you don't like it, then move on, do something else, right? So it's not like, we're sending you into a prison or something that you can't come
Yeah,
out of. So it's fine. As I said, coming out to sea, even for 3 to 4 years, you will learn a lot. There's a lot of skills that you will build, which are transferable skills that you can take ashore and into any other job. Because it's hard to find a job where at the age of 20 or 21 you get to manage teams. You are a team leader, and you are leading these teams in high stakes situations. That teaches you a lot. These are definitely transferable skills. You can take it anywhere in the world.
Totally agree. That's a really important point because when I speak to seafarers, sometimes they're kind of stuck in their ways in the sense that they think, this is all that I know. I've only ever been at sea. No one else is ever going to want me. But actually, my experience is that when you speak to employers, lots of them would actually love to have a seafarer on board,
Yeah,
um, and that's because that they have soft skills that the average shore-based worker who hasn't had a job like seafaring does
yeah,
not have, um, like the ability to have strong discipline,
yeah,
teamwork, getting stuff done, like really, really, a mindset that you kind of need to have, uh, kind of organically, somewhat, in order to be able to achieve some of the outputs that employers are looking for. And seafarers definitely have that mindset. I want to talk a
yeah,
little bit
absolutely. So I
about.
think so. There's
Yeah, sorry.
one thing that I do feel, especially on the navigation side, that you learn is to keep deciding. Uh, because you're in a situation where you need to keep deciding. You cannot put away that decision. If I
Yeah,
need to give a helm order now, it has to be now. I cannot wait for later. So it's teaching you to keep deciding, decide. And that is a very valuable skill. When you come ashore, where you need to make a decision. Okay, once you take the decision, maybe later you realize maybe that was the wrong decision at that point. But that's fine, but still you keep moving. You're not stuck in that decision paralysis. You're not stuck with that. You keep moving because you keep making a decision and keep moving ahead.
such an important point. Thank you for raising that. I've never thought of that one actually as the volume of decision making that's necessary from a navigational perspective. Sometimes people on shore base only have to make one decision a day, and they struggle with that. You're totally right though. With seafarers, especially those on the bridge, it's continuous all the time, um, which I think is a really, really powerful skill to have. I want to talk about social media. I know you mentioned it briefly earlier on. What's your thoughts on social media within maritime? Do you think that there is? I know that we said from the perspective of the next generation, it's difficult for them because of social media. Now they can see everything. Sometimes you're always comparing yourself to what you don't have, and that can be a negative. But do you think there is a specific place for social media within maritime, both on the vessels at sea and in the ports, that can benefit the industry?
Well, I do think social media has not really tapped into seafarers yet. They have never been identified as a market, I would say. And now let me be honest. Okay, so when I was, let's say, a chief officer, and I was just carrying on to becoming a master, and that was when Facebook started coming in, and you had lots of different platforms, and you were worried. You were often thinking, hey, my crew is spending all the time on their phones and on this social media. And you are discussing with your chief engineer and your chief officer, hey, this is not a good sign, and things like that. But I have evolved from there, because what you have to realize is you have to evolve with times. The profession itself has evolved, and the people who are in that profession have evolved. So you cannot expect a seafarer who's coming on board to come on board and be completely shut off from social media, because that is not how they are programmed at the moment. So social media, for whatever it is, you have to accept it and make use of it. So how can we best utilize it? Whether it's for seafarers safety, whether it's for keeping them abreast with current affairs, whether it's keeping them just keeping them grounded, and making them feel connected to the outside world. It has to be used. So there, I really feel, Carl, the work that you are doing with the work that you are doing is really superb, and it really needs, the profession needs to be out there in social media. uh, Again, let's not forget, we are the last profession out there that's an adventure, right?
For sure. And I think that that can be told so well through social media. I've
Yes, indeed.
seen there's some fantastic social media creators out there. My favorite is actually an Indian guy called Karanveer Singh. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He works for
I have seen Karanveer's some of his videos on Instagram or on
yeah,
LinkedIn. Yeah, he does make some really good ones. Yes.
yeah. He's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Indian seafarer creator there is. Um, but because of him, off the back of him, there are now lots of other younger guys and girls who are doing a similar sort of thing. And I think it's really exciting to see creators, this next generation, vlogging their lifestyle on board ship, because that can sometimes be all it takes to inspire someone to make a decision on their career.
Yep.
I'll give you an
Absolutely.
example actually from the perspective from the UK. So um, there's a girl called India based here in the south of England. She's about 22 years old, and
Hmm.
in COVID times, she was a seafarer, but in COVID times, she obviously had to stay ashore, and she was at home and she was filming videos just based on cooking and fitness and things like that. And she started to get lots of followers who were just interested in her character. And then eventually, when COVID finished, she went back to
Hmm.
sea, and her content changed from what it was originally to now stuff that she's doing on board. So she started filming her lifestyle while working at sea. So
Okay.
what was really interesting from this case study is that the initial followers that she developed didn't know she was even a seafarer,
Okay.
but she kept getting more followers once she started filming her stuff at sea. Now, this is the most powerful part. Those people that originally followed her because of just her food videos and her fitness videos during COVID stayed around to keep watching the videos when they were at sea and started
Hmm.
messaging her saying, I love what you're doing. How can I get
Hmm.
involved in careers at sea? And what's even more
Wow.
powerful is that her demographic was primarily 18 to 25-year-old women. Women. So
Hmm.
when people are talking about diversity and how do we get more females on board, this is such a powerful tool. We need to work with social media role models who can inspire people that might not even know maritime careers exist to
Absolutely.
have
Yeah.
a window, open a window and see what it's like to be in their shoes, and perhaps even inspire them to make a decision to then pursue a career in maritime.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, ha, probably half the people in Europe, or let's say, not half, I would say even 80% of the people in Europe cannot even fathom that the bananas that they eat in and out are probably coming on a ship,
Yeah,
and without ships they would probably never eat a banana. uh, so yeah, I mean, but the thing is, shipping has for the longest time been this phantom industry. It's always working in the backgrounds, and it's never been out there. And it's just the few lucky of us who've been fortunate enough to be exposed in some way, that we saw, hey, there is this career option out there. But now probably we need to do far more to be able to attract, a better workforce and a more excited workforce who come here because they're passionate about being in this profession.
totally agree. We're both totally for that. Um, I want to ask you one last final question, and that is based around your home country of India. Um, I think there were some statistics that recently came out that said India is the third country that supplies the highest volume of seafarers to date. First being the Philippines, second being China, third being India. With the growth, extremely fast growth of India's economy, what do you think the future is for the Indian seafarer, and
So
how do you think India will produce more Indian seafarers in the future? And final question, sorry to add, do you think there's a possibility that India could ever be the number one producing country for seafarers?
So okay, so if I'm looking at the outlook for of seafaring for Indian seafarers, so India right now is at a, Indian seafarers are quite sought after, both at, across different types of ships. They're really sought after. How I do feel that the lure and the attractiveness of seafaring in India is kind of dropping a bit. And there needs to be a concerted effort uh, in order to be able to keep that pace up. That you have more and more seafarers coming out, Indian seafarers coming out at sea. In the short to medium term, I definitely don't see any kind of a worry in the short to medium term. It's definitely growing at the moment because I go when I come to India, I check in with some of my friends. I know there are lots of young cadets who are going into marine academies. But if I'm looking at the long term, then do see that there is a point of concern because there are other carriers also out here in India that are competing, probably paying just as much and probably being able to give you, everything that you need. And then seafaring is not so attractive enough. So there, yes, we do have our job cut out for us to be able to inspire, a new generation of seafarers to come out to sea. So there is some work to be done. There's no doubt about that. That is definitely my outlook for now. And when you asked about can India become the number one provider of seafarers in the world, I would say an emphatic yes. It definitely is because the kind of infrastructure that has been built out here in India for seafarer training is immense. You've got lots of marine academies, you've got proper institutes, you've got a proper certification system. India for the longest time has been on the whitelist of the STCW. The Indian tickets are highly valued outside. You can say the brand value of the Indian seafarer amongst ship owners has been already established. So they realize that these Indian seafarers can do well. They maintain my ship, our ships well. They are able to operate my ships in the best possible manner. So that brand value has already been established. So it is up to us to be able to maintain it and probably take it a little further.
It also appears as well that the Indian government do a lot to protect their seafarers as well, right? It seems as if they really care for their seafarers. And you're right, rolling out lots of training schools, academies, and really pushing policies to make seafaring more attractive.
Yeah.
But equally at the same time, you're right. We are like every other country; they're competing against other career options.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, let's see. I think that it would be interesting to see what the future holds. Because personally, I think India is a very exciting country from an economic standpoint. But when I'm speaking to some of the seafarers from there as well, it's extremely exciting. I think just the other day, someone was telling me about a school. I think it had its name changed. It was. I think it's called the Indian University of Maritime. Help
Yeah.
me.
The Indian Maritime University, IMU.
In, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that particular institute has developed more chief engineers than any other school in the world. This is what I've been
Oh
told.
wow. I didn't know that.
So
Okay.
yeah, so really, really impressive stuff. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me, Abhishek. I appreciate that we're a few minutes over time. Is there any last remarks that you'd like to add before we close up?
Well, the only thing I will say is, seafaring is evolving, the seafarer is evolving, and ships are evolving. So it's an exciting time to be out at sea. If there is anybody out there who's thinking whether this is a career for them, if you're in doubt, I think this is the right place to go.
What a great way to finish. Thank you.